One of these movies got banned for showing alien eggs that make people's guts explode. Another was shot by guys high out of their minds, then banned in Canada for being too disturbing. A third shows a woman violated by a giant alien worm. These weren't some indie freak shows. These were real, actual theatrical releases, cut, banned, rated, and buried for being too much even by 80s standards. Contamination is an Italian sci-fi horror flick that made the UK's infamous Video Nasties list, all because of exploding guts. The plot is simple. Alien eggs land on Earth, and whoever comes into contact with them explodes. That's the whole pitch. It was originally called Alien Arrives on Earth and was designed to ride the hype of Ridley Scott's Alien, but instead of building tension and atmosphere like Scott did, Contamination just goes full splatter from the start. Where Alien had one iconic chest-bursting scene, this one tries to top it with a dozen. No build-up, no suspense, just people blowing up over and over again. It's cheap, it's messy, and by the end, it's lost all impact. But back in the day, that was apparently enough to get you banned. In the UK, it was labeled obscene, banned from home video, and owning a copy could literally get you arrested. It wasn't until 2004 that the BBFC finally cleared it uncut. And the irony? It's not even that extreme. It feels ridiculous that Contamination got lumped in with stuff like Cannibal Holocaust. It's basically an over-enthusiastic knockoff that throws meat at the camera and calls it sci-fi horror. But back in the early 80s, that was apparently enough to be a moral threat. If Alien had a trashy British cousin, it would be Inseminoid. It's a low-budget UK sci-fi horror movie where a team of archaeologists explores some alien ruins on a far-off planet. One of the women gets impregnated by an alien, goes full possessed, and starts killing off the rest of the crew. It had a budget of $1 million, half of which came from the Shaw brothers, better known for kung fu films than outer space horror. You can see the budget in the sets, which are tight and cheap-looking, but they somehow still managed to go big on gore. The film got flagged almost immediately. UK censors asked for cuts, but even with the edits, it landed on the police's Video Nasties list. Tapes could be seized under the Video Recordings Act, and yeah, that happened. The Los Angeles Times Review absolutely torched it, called it one of the most excruciatingly violent and nauseating space horror films within recent memory. Even BAFTA hated it, dismissing it as commercial rubbish and saying it wasn't the kind of movie the British film industry should be making. But somehow, Roger Corman liked it. Of course he did. Galaxy of Terror, aka Mind Warp or Planet of Horrors, is one of the weirdest cult sci-fi horror films ever made. A Roger Corman production, so you already know it's going to be sleazy, low budget, and somehow still kind of fascinating. It's basically about a rescue mission to a planet where the crew gets picked off one by their worst fears turned real. It's remembered mostly for one scene. A female crew member gets assaulted and killed by a giant maggot. That scene was censored all over the world. In the UK, the 1986 VHS release had to cut 14 seconds of it just to get distribution. But here's the thing. Once you've seen that moment, there's no topping it. The rest of the movie keeps going, but everyone remembers it as the worm assault movie, which is unfortunate because for a Corman joint, it's actually pretty solid otherwise. The sets are impressive for the budget, the camera works decent, the cast is surprisingly committed, and the story, while a little clunky, has shades of Event Horizon in it. It's sleazy, it's grimy, and yes, the sexual violence is a huge problem, but at the same time it's become part of cult film history. You won't forget it, whether you want to or not. This one's a British sci-fi horror film made for about 60 grand, and it looks every bit of it. A man vanishes, gets abducted by aliens, and returns years later, except now he's something else. Not human. His son starts picking up weird powers, and it's absolutely unhinged. It was passed uncut for UK cinemas, but during the home video panic of the 80s, it got swept into the Video Nasties mess. It was never officially prosecuted, but it wasn't re-released on video until 1987, so basically it was blacklisted for years. And here's the best part. The director, Harry Bromley Davenport, has straight up admitted that the weird tone and bizarre events weren't intentional. He and the writers were completely high while working on the script, and they just kept throwing in ideas they thought would be cool. The toy soldier murder scene, the alien birth, all of it. Davenport later said he's embarrassed by the film, but he's also kind of proud that it became known as one of the grossest sci-fi horror films of the era. The Thing is a masterpiece now, but when it came out, it was absolutely hated. John Carpenter's film about a shape-shifting alien terrorizing a research team in Antarctica got ripped to shreds by critics. Too gross, too depressing, too much slime and paranoia. It even got banned in Finland, not just cut, but banned outright for being too gory. In other markets, scenes had to be toned down for TV airings. People often say it flopped because E.T. had just come out and audiences wanted friendly aliens. But the deeper reason might be that The Thing was just too scary. Not just the gore, but the total hopelessness. There's no heroic last stand. No one saves the day. It's all mistrust, paranoia, and a deeply unsettling ending where you're not even sure who's still human. And yeah, even Tarantino admits this one actually scared him. He said it's the only horror movie that ever did. That says a lot. Videodrome wasn't just controversial, it was radioactive. David Cronenberg's body horror take on media addiction follows a sleazy cable programmer, played by James Woods, who finds an underground broadcast called Videodrome. Turns out it's literally reprogramming people's brains with hallucinations and tumors. The US release ran into a wall immediately. The original cut got slapped with an X rating, mostly for the sadomasochistic scenes. Universal didn't want anything to do with it, so Cronenberg had to trim the film multiple times just to get it in theaters. Even then, it only opened on 88 screens and made about $2 million dead on arrival. But the MPAA didn't stop at the theaters. They went after the VHS too. The only way to rent it legally in the US was a watered-down R-rated version. In Cronenberg's own home province of Ontario in Canada, Videodrome was straight-up banned under local obscenity laws for almost a year. The Road Warrior, known outside the US as Mad Max 2, wasn't just a sequel, it was the movie that introduced American audiences to full-throttle, post-apocalyptic chaos. You've got Mel Gibson driving through the wasteland in leather gear, fighting off punks with flamethrowers, trucks exploding in every direction. It hit right when people were already freaked out by nuclear war and gas shortages. In the US, Warner Brothers assumed no one saw the first Mad Max, so they dropped the title and cut out 8 seconds of violence to avoid an X rating. But that was nothing compared to the international response. Sweden, New Zealand, West Germany, and Finland banned the movie outright when it first released. Sweden cited the constant, dehumanizing violence. In the US, some drive-ins in the South refused to show it entirely after local church groups protested it for being morally anarchic and sexually confusing. Even though it got a proper release eventually, the early bans gave the movie an edge. People wanted to see what was so dangerous, and now it's widely considered one of the most influential action movies of all time. Death Warmed Up is a sci-fi gorefest out of New Zealand. Banned in Australia, censored in the UK, and barely released in North America. It's about a brainwashed guy who murders his own parents, then escapes from an asylum and fights a bunch of mutant freaks on an island controlled by a mad scientist. It's low budget, totally nuts, and filled with scenes of exploding heads, syringes in eyeballs, and chemical lobotomies. The kind of stuff that instantly got attention from censors. Australia's classification board refused to rate it in 1985, calling it excessively sadistic. Queensland kept it banned even after a censored version came out. Even Finland gave it a temporary ban. In the UK, it got dropped onto the Video Nasties list. Distributors had to cut almost 5 full minutes from the film just to get it on VHS. As for the US, forget about a proper release. It played at some midnight screenings and then got dumped on video in a chopped-up form by Paragon in 1987. RoboCop is the rare sci-fi blockbuster that almost didn't make it past the ratings board. Paul Verhoeven's ultra-violent satire got slapped with an X rating 3 times before the MPAA finally gave it an R. The main problem? The execution scene where Murphy is shot to pieces and a malfunctioning robot that blasts a guy for a full 40 seconds. Verhoeven held his ground for a while, But Orion Pictures forced 17 seconds of cuts before theaters would show it, and even then, groups like the Catholic Legion of Decency came out swinging. They called the movie a sign of moral collapse. Local news shows ran segments asking if the MPAA had lost control. The controversy didn't stop it. RoboCop made $53 million in the US and exploded on home video. But overseas, more cuts followed. Sweden trimmed 13 violent scenes. Australia aired a totally neutered version on TV with most of the gore removed. Even the UK video release in '88 was slightly edited. And when it finally hit television in the US, the censors butchered it even more, cutting full scenes, replacing dialogue, and turning it into one of the most bizarrely censored movies ever broadcast. Today, everyone remembers the satire and the one-liners. But at the time, the sheer violence of RoboCop made it one of the most heavily censored sci-fi films of the decade. Turkey Shoot is one of the most infamous dystopian sci-fi films to ever come out of Australia. The plot's simple. Prisoners are dumped in a jungle and hunted for sport by the ruling elite. What follows is straight-up grindhouse chaos, cannibalism, dismemberment, a mutant with a flamethrower, and more gore than most war films. It was meant to be over the top, and it worked, maybe too well. The original cut had over 20 minutes removed for international release because of how violent it was. Even with the cuts, it was banned in the UK until 1985 and added to the video nasties list. And in grindhouse circles, it earned a rep as the goriest Hunger Games ripoff, even though it came out 30 years earlier. Production was just as unhinged as the movie. The Australian government nearly shut it down mid-filming because of live ammo and unlicensed explosions. According to the director, half the blasts were set off by crew members who just liked blowing things up.